This episode of the Pakcast is brought to you by the Animal Pro Training Bar. 20 grams of high-quality protein in 3 delicious flavors. All right, guys, welcome back to the Animal Pakcast. This is the Ask Animal segment, third episode. We have a special guest with us, Big Vincenzo Masone. As always, I'm accompanied by Gary G6 Turner. My name is Joseph Percher. We got a ton of questions from you guys. Really excited to have this guy in the booth with us. So let's dive right into him. The first question that we got is from Tyler M05. He wants to know, how do you increase your strength in the gym quickly without the use of steroids or even supplements?
You're looking at me?
Yeah, you can go first.
Well, the first thing you're going to do, I always say, is you're going to have your diet in check. You're going to want to research or at least invest in some sort of training program or cycle where your rep ranges and your exercises are going to be pre-selected to cater towards what you're trying to improve in, I think. You know, it's really going to be a combination of everything that's going to go into that. There's no, like, one thing, like, I know a lot of people ask, well, if you do 4 to 6 reps, is that going to help you? Yeah, it can. But there's different phases to all strength training, you know, where you go a little bit higher reps. There's, you know, different, like, progressive overload and stuff like that. For me, personally, my strength's at an all-time high right now, and I'm adhering to a progressive overload type manner of training, which I've never done in the past. So I would honestly go with a little bit more along that way. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this guy didn't really give us a ton to work with, and his profile was private. I went and looked. So I don't know if he means improve his strength as a 1-rep max. The three of us are probably not the best group to answer that question. If you're talking about just your strength in the gym and you're training in bodybuilding ranges, I think a progressive overload style where every week you're doing some type of progression. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're adding a ton of weight every week. You shouldn't be going from, you know, squatting 365 to then 455 the next week. I think that's ridiculous. But if you're adding a rep or two, and then also you want to program your strength. So if you have a couple weeks where you hit 6s, and then you have a couple of weeks where you hit 8s, a couple of weeks where you hit 10s, and then you go back to the 6s, now you should be using heavier weight than you did the first time. So it's programming, and then like you said, it's the food, it's everything else. So this is a bit of a loaded question, but there's a couple different strategies, but probably the strongest guy here, so let's hear it.
Yeah, so basically before I answer the question, I just want to say thank you guys all for these questions, and, you know, thank you guys for having me come down. You know, I think these two guys kind of, you know, hit it on the head, but I'm just looking back at, like, to when I first started. So no steroids, no supplements for me. Started at 14. Basically what I did, I had a marble notebook, and, you know, I had limited resources with weights. I mean, if you guys track back to, you know, one of my first mass files, I was working out in a cellar. You know, very, very limited. Maybe a bench, maybe some dumbbells. And I just wrote down, you know, everything I did, how many reps. And, you know, my steroids and my supplements were food. I mean, any chance I got.
That has to be the first thing.
It's the first thing. I mean, if you told me right now you could have an unlimited amount of steroids or an unlimited amount of food, and you could just go train, you know, depending on what it's for, anything, powerlifting, bodybuilding, I'd take the food all day. You know, as you guys know, that's a big resource for me, and you know, all of us here are a big believer in that. So I'd say, you know, track your progress in, you know, with a book, and, you know, like I said, these guys basically nailed it on the head. But you know, we don't have too much info in this question, but
Vin, were you doing progressive overload when you were that young starting? Like, so you said you were keeping a logbook. So
right.
Was it like, you know, 100-pound dumbbells for 10 this week, and then you made it a point to try to get 12, or?
Oh, it was always like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the first time I got on the bench, the first time, I think I benched 95 pounds. So that was, what, 25s in the bar? Yeah, I think 25s. So next week, you know, the goal was to hit that and set it for 8. Maybe it was like 8 reps or something. this was, I don't know, over a dozen years ago.
Yeah.
But, it was the increased 2 reps.
Yeah.
And that was me just getting into it, not even knowing about competitive bodybuilding, anything in the element I'm in now. But, it kind of just came natural.
Now, is that how you train now?
No. I don't walk around with a logbook, things like that. I just kind of...
I kind of feel like, too, for you, you're at a point where if you were going in every week and doing progressive overload and every week something was increasing, the weights that you're using, at a certain point for bodybuilding, I almost feel like the risk is not worth the reward.
It's not worth the reward. I see these guys, and I'm not talking bad about anyone, but... it's almost like who could tear their pec faster, putting on like 500 incline and things like that. It's like,
it looks great for Instagram.
Yeah, right. That's cool. But guess what, man?
One rep and it's over.
One rep, you're done. Can I do that? Yeah, I could probably go head to head with anybody out there. But do I want to? I just don't think the risk is worth the reward. And I've had injuries that we're gonna get into.
Yeah.
But if I could, like I just, before we even got started, I was talking to you guys about behind the neck presses.
Yeah.
And, it was something I was really weak on because of mobility, getting my arms back there. But now I'm up to, 315 for almost 10 reps. I'm talking about to behind my ears. You know what I mean? No to the top of the head shit. But, it's just that's how I kind of track my progress. I'll have my main lifts, barbell rows and, flat bench press. But even like the flat bench press, you guys see me put up a video. I'm doing 315 for I think almost 30 reps now. I'd rather do that than 500 for one. I can nail 500 for one, but guess what? Once my pec goes, I got insurance and all that, but I'm a year behind now, and I'm 27, so we got to make this shit happen sooner or later.
Joe actually texted me the same thing yesterday. I had a good bench session, and I hit I hit 145s for 20 on flat bench. Joe goes, next week 25 reps. He goes, do not go to 150s or 160s because you did 20. He goes, and then go down to 6 reps at 160. He goes, now you should go at a weight that you're not afraid of, and then try to blast that out further.
Like dominate that weight even further.
And that's how I think like a Dorian Yates approach was then compared to like a Ronnie Coleman. Like they're both two of the greatest bodybuilders to ever live, right? But if you look back on Dorian Yates' logbooks and
the weights, did the weights not change as much?
Well, the weights, they might have changed, but he was
more
all about
6 to 8.
Yeah, doing 6 to 8, but there's some in his logbook where he's just dominating that weight. Like if he got it, let's say squat, I think I remember this number, it was like 485 for like 6 reps, and then 2 or 3 weeks later he did like 8 to 10. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then that was it. So, and then like a Ronnie Coleman, who was just like, you'll never see a Ronnie Coleman again, ever.
Yeah.
I promise you that.
Yeah.
But he was doing 800, for 2 to 3 reps. So it's like, could he have been as big doing, 600 for 12? Of course. But guess what? That motherfucker wasn't thinking about the risk.
Yeah.
And that's why he was the greatest bodybuilder to ever live.
Yeah, he threw all the risk to the side and was like, I'm going to do what I think will work to be the craziest looking motherfucker that has ever lived.
There was no, I'm not saying he wasn't thinking about his future because he was an 8-time Mr. Olympia, but he wasn't thinking about what happens when this is over. Right. Neither was Dorian Yates. I mean, you guys watched his documentary.
They both have crazy injuries.
He didn't know about life after bodybuilding because he was so fucking one-dimensional. Yeah. And, like, I'm trying to be that way, but not. You know what I mean? Because I'm trying to, do other things in life and start a family. And I know that this isn't going to last forever, but I'm giving it my all right now.
But it's just a matter of being smart. I mean, Ronnie kind of threw caution in the wind. Dorian, same thing. We're not saying don't train hard, but it's just be smart. Like if you're touching a new weight for the first time and you can only get 6, that's a new movement or a new weight for you. There's a good chance something could go. You know what I mean? So I would rather see guys just dominate weights that they can manhandle for higher reps. You know what I mean? Like I watched Chad Nichols just did an interview about his entire prep with Rami and was saying that they got a head start in the off season, and Chad told him, I want you to get to a certain level of strength, like, whatever the numbers are for each big lift or whatever it is. And then from there, I only want you adding reps. Yeah. So he got to a point, Chad said that he was doing like 150s for sets of 20 and got to be so efficient at that they were doing time rest periods where he was only resting 60 seconds on the dot and then he'd do another 20.
Exactly.
60 seconds and then do another 20.
Right.
You're telling me, so that's 60 reps in 3 minutes with the 150s. He's getting up and his chest probably feels like it's going to explode.
In matter of minutes.
Yeah.
And that was the best Rami I think that we've ever seen.
Hands down.
We could all agree there.
Yeah.
I do not want to hear people say you could be too big. Because that's just fucking, what is the point of bodybuilding then?
It's one of the three big criteria. It's shape, conditioning, and size.
And he had them all.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not being biased because, I'm trying to be a mass monster as well, but come on, bro.
Yeah, I don't really know
Dexter's
what people
one
want.
of the greatest bodybuilders to ever live. Same with William Bonac. I mean, Dexter, 52 years old.
Yeah, unbelievable.
But come on, man.
I don't really know what else people want.
No. Downsize? Come on, bro. It's
No.
fucking bodybuilding. Then why doesn't he go to classic fucking physique?
Yeah.
The only thing you can knock on Rami compared to, say, the 2013 Rami, which was one of his best looks when he came out firing one New York Pro, he was more separated. Now, especially in the quads. Now, I'm pretty sure that there's an SEO thing going on in his quads where he had, like, he lacked detail for a while.
I thought that for years, and it definitely looked like when he was in Kuwait,
Yeah,
the
knobby
quads
shit going.
were pointed.
Yeah,
and
there
shit.
was, yeah.
Chad talked about it last night, though. He said that his legs, he just has such a response that his legs just blow up. So he said that they were backstage, and Chad took full responsibility. He said, I loaded him too hard, so he's just full, like, splitting at the seams to begin with before he ever pumped up.
Yeah.
And he said as his last thing, he pumped up his upper body, like full, intense upper body
Chad make him do his lower body?
And he said he had him do 10 body weight squats. And he said by like the sixth one, he's
Blood was
watching
filled?
it backstage, and he's like, he said my heart just dropped. He said I watched what was happening with his legs, and he's like, this is like nothing that I've ever seen before. He goes, we're fucked.
Yeah.
And he goes, I couldn't say that to him, of course. But my heart's in my, my stomach watching this guy's legs just blow up. And then you go back and look at it,
And there was
and
smooth.
you could tell they were just pumped and full looking.
Yeah,
They weren't
and
separated.
there goes the separation. But, again, like, you can't tell someone to downsize. That doesn't mean necessarily downsize. That just means, take a different approach at pumping up and things like that.
And he said they'll work on that. And he said going into the night show, he didn't eat, drink water, or pump up. And he looked phenomenal at night. But anyway, we kind of got sidetracked there. So let's move on to this next one. At Matt592658 wants to know the $1 million bodybuilding question. I want to bulk up but shred at the same time. What is the best method and best stack that I can put together? Obviously, we work for a supplement company, so I'm assuming by stack he means actual supplements. If he means drugs, I'm going to tell you right now there's no drugs on the planet that are going to bulk you up and shred you at the same time. If you find out about any of these drugs or any of these methods, please send me a DM because
We need to know.
them myself.
Me too. I mean, there's different ways of answering this question.
Yeah.
I mean, there's dozen different ways. I mean, you're talking about bulk up and like a lean bulk, or get bigger and be totally shredded at the same time, because I honestly don't think that there's an actual possible way. But, when you're getting into a prep, okay, you had a great off season, you're 250 pounds, you're going to come down to 215, 220. You start losing that body fat slowly, right? You time it. So it's a 20 or 16 week or 12 week, whatever you decide, or you and your coach. And as you slowly decrease body fat, you're going to see in the gym, when you peel off and pump up, people are going to say, wow, you're starting to look bigger, but you're actually losing weight. It's a different, deal when you're trying to stay covered up, wear sweatshirts and stuff like that. That's how I like to do it. But when you're shredded and people are like, oh my God, you look so much bigger, but they don't realize that I just lost 50 pounds. You know what I mean? So I think, the method there is, slow dieting. And if, with the stack, like you just said, what kind of stack are we talking about? I mean, Animal offers a huge variety of different supplements that could, help that. I know Animal Cuts is great when I'm trying to, maintain
pre-contest.
muscle and lose body fat. I'm also a huge fan of animal stack as well. So I think those two stacked together would be a
His
pretty
best
good,
bet.
pretty
Yeah.
good cocktail there.
Yeah. I mean, to me, for this question, I read this and I don't mean to put this kid on blast. I appreciate that he wrote in a question for us, but there's part of me that just kind of shakes my head because, this process takes time. You're not going to get huge and ripped at the same time. You want to be huge and ripped, get huge first. That's A. That's number one. You can't be huge and ripped if you're not huge first. So, like you said, have a great off season. Don't dick around in the off season. Don't treat it like it's just a free for all. Act like a bodybuilder 24/7 and have a great productive off season. Get huge, and then when it's time to drop the hammer and get shredded, that's what it's time
You'll
for.
be huge and shredded.
Right.
But I don't. There's just no possible way you could bulk up and get shredded at the same time. I mean, let's see if Gary has anything.
No.
You got any magic formulas for the guy?
Yeah, right. No, I'm a phase type bodybuilder. I go, off season, we're trying to get as big as possible. I've learned over the years to keep that body fat somewhat in line.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean get very fat, but your diet needs to be catered towards a caloric surplus at that point. Your training needs to make sure that you're recovering and everything like that to grow.
Yep.
With that being said, then when you're done with that, you switch into the cutting phase. That's pretty self-explanatory. And you could just go 100% either way,
Right.
whatever you need to do. In terms of stacks, if we're going for animal, for getting bigger, I definitely would go with our test explosion stack, which is animal test, animal stack, followed by animal M stack in the cycle off period. So you're going to want to go 1 pack of animal test, 1 pack of animal stack for the first 42 days, and then you discontinue that and immediately go into 1 packet of M stack for 21 days. That's one of the strongest stacks that we offer in terms of getting, adding on quality size.
Probably the strongest.
It is the strongest one, and, and I would also add an animal meal, as wherever you need to replace meals, as well as get extra calories, because you're going to want to eat like that. For cutting, obviously, I am a huge proponent of animal cuts. It's actually definitely my fat burner of choice. I only use them when I get ready for a show. However, that is my go-to. And then you can actually throw in, like Vin said, animal stack during a cutting phase. It actually is very efficient. It actually, it helps boost growth hormone, natural growth hormone at that point, which is going to help you in the long run with that. So I just think basically you got to go by phases. There might be like one person, like 1% of the world that maybe can do it somewhat.
Roman Fritz.
Yeah, I think that a lot of these people what they're really asking is, how do I lean bulk?
I think people are asking what's the shortest route and least amount of
To
time
get
and
to a
effort
stage
that I
look?
can put into this. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So this next one is a really good question. This is something that we talked about in the office actually a couple of days ago. So at Rowan Jones asked, best advice you'd give yourself starting your bodybuilding journey. So we talked about this in the office the other day about almost writing your younger self a letter. Like, what type of advice could you go back and give your younger self? So if you were, from right now, if you were going to go back and give a young mass bodybuilding advice of maybe things to avoid or things that you could have done better or things that you wish you did, let's hear it.
Well, that's a fantastic question. My head's spinning right now with things I tell myself, but I basically start out with keeping it simple. Basically, keep your circle a little smaller. Don't let everyone get into your head. Don't let everyone, try and take you under their wing, because sometimes the people that, come out of the blue and say, oh, I want to help you, this, and that, they're not out for your best interest. You know what I mean? I would also say, find yourself a coach to start, because I basically coached myself up until 22 years old. I won 1 overall by myself. I'll take that. But other than that, get a coach. I didn't even know that bodybuilders use coaches up until I was like 21, 22, and then till I can actually afford one, I looked into it. And I would also say do a lot more research on nutrition, because for my first prep, I think I was 20 years old. I was hitting Wendy's. I was hitting Wendy's, taking off the bun. You know what I mean? So
no carbs.
Yeah, no carbs. But it's you look back at 6-7 years ago and how things have changed. It's just fucking unbelievable. You know what I mean? But
and that's natural. I think if you asked anybody that trains and takes it seriously, there's a progression that your journey takes where you look back at some of the stuff, even some of the stuff that I've been trying to help other people, and someone asked me for advice. Oh, it looks like you got bigger. What's some advice? And I cringe at thinking about some of the stuff I told people.
Yeah, because you're on the spot, and you walk away and you're like, wait, can I go back and tell that guy this? And you're like, no.
I used to bulk when I said I'm going to bulk now. I would mean add another protein shake. It was just 2 scoops of protein. That was my bulk surplus.
Yeah. Yeah, and you look back and you were a firm believer, and that was your bulk.
Right.
And
I was about 170 pounds at the time.
Also, though, on the other end of it, you kind of went off the rails on a bulk too. So
yeah,
So if you were going to give your younger self advice, what would it be? I mean, obviously, don't get fat.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that goes without saying. But I have actually some ones prior to that.
Yeah.
If you're a bodybuilder and you're trying to compete and stuff like that, you do not need to bench press. And when I say that, is the last time I actually flat bench press was when I tore my pec in 2008. You got to understand, obviously, powerlifters bench press because that's a movement they do, and their bench press looks different than a bodybuilding bench press. They're incorporating lats, triceps, leg drive. Everything goes into getting the maximum amount of weight. With a bodybuilder, you want to isolate your pec muscles. Unfortunately, the pec muscles aren't that strong to withstand a large poundage, and I tore it at the time with 365 on the 7th rep, and the whole thing just ripped off. It sounded like Velcro through a thing, and this is before I even knew what a tear was. I just thought, you failed on the rep, somebody picked it up, and that was it. And I knew what happened when I did it. It was all bruised, and still to this day, I've never competed with. I was a college kid at the time. I did it at a college gym, and I never competed without the hole in my chest. So it's just something that I've never felt bad for myself for. But if I knew that you didn't have to do that, and I wasn't just like a meathead at the gym, I probably would have 2 pecs intact at this point. That's another one. Another one would be train your fucking legs. Because in my entire college career, I was the Jersey Shore lifter type. 4 days, upper body rotation, repeat. Yeah. Never trained legs, and I looked like freaking Johnny Bravo, like walking around with like little chicken legs out the bottom. So
medium shirts,
right? But I seriously, when I started bodybuilding, it was always catch up. Everybody said Gary doesn't have any legs. That was always just I'm still playing catch up. Finally, it's starting to like level itself out where all the training with the legs now matches it.
Yep.
But for years I competed with weak legs, and that was also because for years I never had any leg training. And
well, I was gonna say too, because you were so adamant, like you would tell yourself you do not have to bench press. That's something I think like the big 3 gets hammered into kids early on. And if you're specifically bodybuilding, I agree with you. I don't think you need to bench press, and I don't think that you need to back barbell squat, which is something that you've talked about that you felt like you had to do. You didn't feel like a bodybuilder if you weren't doing it. And where did it get you? You had weak legs.
I had weak legs for the longest time, and I was training, squats. Like, you squat to get big legs. And I was doing it, and it just wasn't. And they were intense. I've squat 650 pounds before, 405 for, many reps, and they were good sets. They killed my CNS, but why were my sweeps not hanging off the way?
Right.
And then finally this past off season, I worked in the hack squat as the main movement as an overload, and my legs started blowing up. I'm like, well, just keep going then. I fed into that dogma that you have to back barbell squat. I'm surrounded by a lot of power lifters. Of course, they do it, and it's like you're a pussy if you don't squat. And I fed into it for years. Now I say, well, my legs are twice your size, and I'm doing better.
Now, when we say squat too, I mean back barbell squatting.
Right.
I don't think you have to. I absolutely think you need to find a squat movement that works for you.
Yeah, right.
And turn into a psycho when you're under it.
Yeah.
But I don't think that you need to, and I don't think that you need to barbell deadlift off the floor either as a bodybuilder. Am I right?
I hurt myself doing that. I just want to touch on the squat thing. So, I've always been implemented, squat, 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 squat. That's all we could do, but I'm 6'2". Yeah. So it's a little tough for me to get under the bar. I've been trying to get back under it with lighter weight, 315, 405, just really, really getting low. But, you watch your Blood and Guts, and Yates had his leg routine. What was one of the main compounds? So it was the hack squat, and it was the leg press and the extension and all that. But, so, the deadlifts off the ground. I mean, people always ask me, when they see my back or, they see how wide I am or they see a video, how much you deadlift or this and that. I said, well, the most I've ever deadlifted was 675, and I actually tore my lat doing that like 3 or 4 years ago. So that was the last time.
Case in point. There you go.
Yeah,
you don't need it.
I tore my fucking lat. I heard a pop. There was no black and blues because it just, I don't know what happened to it. I think something happened. But if you do see in my front double bicep, there is an indent in my lat. It's not too noticeable when I'm on stage, but, I do notice it once in a while. But right now, man, I do the rack deads. Put the bar at my knees, and I rack dead till I can't. So to everyone out there,
that's something that works for you, too, like for your body. There might be some kid that's listening to this that has a shorter torso, and he's 5'6". Maybe he can barbell squat, you know what I mean? But you have to find the movements that work for your structure. Gary has long femurs, even though he's only, you're what, 5'9"?
Yeah, but
you have long femurs,
yeah,
so your quads were never going to develop barbell back squatting.
Oh, I felt it was in my lower back. I felt it in my kneecaps, and I had decent squat form. It wasn't, I'm sure everybody was like, people have told me, well, you could have worked on your hip mobility and your anyway. Listen, man, I found a movement that fucking works. Let me do it.
Yeah.
Let me just fucking do this.
The first thing we said about, going back telling ourselves, don't let people get in your fucking head. I know sometimes you do, but we all do. I shouldn't say you, but who gives a fuck? Yeah. Listen, when people came up to Ronnie Coleman in the gym at fucking Metroflex and said, hey, man, you shouldn't be doing that, he probably fucking laughed at him. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, everyone's going to have
Same thing with Branch Warren. People critique that guy's training for years.
Guess what? It didn't matter if God came down and said, Branch, you got to stop doing this or you're going to...
He's still going to do it.
Doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So,
I mean, anyone that's got an opinion on bodybuilding would go back and tell, like, if anyone, any guru, coach, whatever, athlete, and I told you, 2 weeks out from the Mr. Olympia, I'm going to front squat 800 pounds for 2 reps. Every single one of you would be like, you're a fucking idiot. Yeah. Do not do that. Mm-hmm. But, again, it's individual. All right, let's move it on. So every week that we've done this, we've got a ton of drug questions. I think having Big Vin in the booth with us this time, it made you guys even further obsessed with the drugs. We said that we were going to talk about it and that we would answer anything. I didn't want to particularly choose one question or one call out in case you guys wanted to remain anonymous, those of you guys that were asking about it. Obviously, we don't condone or suggest or want you guys doing anything illegal or anything harmful, but we do acknowledge that it is part of the sport. Obviously, we're not naive to that. So we're just going to dive into this a little bit in general terms. No, we're not going to tell you amounts or specific stacks or anything ridiculous like that, but we do want to touch on it. So, a big one for both of you guys that people write in specifically for you two, obviously being your size and that you're both in the off season. So Gary, I'll kick this over to you if you care to talk about some of the compounds that have worked for you in the off season or some of the things that you purposely try to avoid because you didn't like how it worked for you.
Yeah, no, I don't mind answering at all. I'm pretty open when it comes stop laughing at me. When it comes to this sort of thing, because I think that when I first started in 2006, we really didn't have this kind of information. Not people verbally talking about it openly. We had people on the forums that were kind of at their tail end at the time talking. So that's where I used to study all the information. And, from my personal experience, I've been at this game for a long time. So I've, been cycling for a long time. I started in 2008. That was 2 years into training. And that goes back to the last question. Is the thing I would say to myself is you should have waited a little bit longer. Yeah. I was 19 years old. I didn't. At least when I started with a cycle that was a beginner cycle compared to what I'm seeing nowadays, where some of these kids are. They're just, when they come up with these dosages and these compounds, and it's just outrageous. They have no experience. I don't think they've never even shot themselves before. So it's like, how do you plan on doing all this stuff? The one thing that I did right is I did a stepping stone myself with lower dosages and worked my way up. Each time I cycled off religiously. I would take the necessary PCT compounds to get my self back in order. So I didn't. I hear guys that run for 3 years straight,
right?
Blasting.
And a big thing too is if you are gonna take that step and jump over to the other side, your health needs to be first. So your blood work needs to be in order before you even think twice about finding a source to get this shit. You need to be checking your blood pressure. I check it weekly. I know that you're on top of it all the time too.
I just, I have the machine at home, the Life Source extra large cuff. If it's on Amazon, I'm not making a joke for you guys with the huge arms. You're not going to get a good reading. I mean, I was just in the doctor. I just had blood work 2 days ago, and they had to get the thigh cuff because you're not going to get a good reading. I mean, it's going to give you some astronomical number, and they're going to say you got to go to the fucking emergency room. So buy your own cuff, big cuff if you need it, and take it every morning. I do it 3 to 4 times a week along with my blood sugar, and I just write it in my little notebook, and I send it to my coach. So,
yeah, it's doing these before we even get into the PED talk. These necessary precautions need to be taken. Blood work is something I always was pretty big on, even as a young kid. I remember going in. My mom didn't understand why I kept saying I need to go for a physical at 22. She didn't know at the time, so and I was still living at home. And then I would go into just a general practitioner, and he would ask me why I wanted this stuff. And
everyone makes that. That happens to everybody.
And then I told the doctor, and I've been screamed at in a doctor's office before. Here I am being a responsible 22-year-old. Well, responsible in the sense that I know I'm doing something bad, but I'm trying to mitigate these risk factors. And getting screamed at by somebody who doesn't understand. That told I was just going to die. You better cut it out now because I'm going to drop dead. And there are definitely risks to that, but it's not something I needed to hear at the time. What I needed to hear was, "I'm glad you're in here. Let's get that blood work done. You come in. We'll check the readings."
Exactly.
And many times I've been to a cardiologist, and he didn't understand why I was there. He did not yell at me. He was a nice guy, and my cardiac CAT scan came back, good. And he was like, "See, nothing." He goes, "Go do your show. You're fine." But at least I knew.
Yeah. And now you have that feeling of comfort,
right.
And you're there for a reason. You have some assholes who just basically freeball it, and they either and
everybody wonders what happens to them.
Healthcare, but they just don't care. You ask them. You have these guys throwing these numbers at you. Hey man, I'm on 1 gram of Tren, 2 grams of this. I look at them like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? And I'm like,
and it's never anybody that's
like, I haven't.
It's never anybody that's impressive.
Right
either.
there, you're like, looking at them.
And then they don't believe you when you tell them what you're doing. It's a lot lower.
Yeah, and that's the time you're like, well, right now I'm off of everything actually, and they're like, no fucking way, or whatever it is. But I don't know, man. I mean, I could touch on this. You want to keep going?
Well, no, not to cut you off. What were you saying?
Go.
In terms of just the personal experience, where nowadays you're hearing a lot of things with these exotic drugs, you hear about mint and stuff like that, and you see it all over. And that's just one type of drug that's out, but it's like an exotic, very new age type thing. It's supposed to be very powerful. I haven't tried it, but you hear them all over, and it's like Joe said, always somebody who's not impressive that is asking about this, and they want to know what you do. Here's what I do: the standard, tried and true stuff. In the off season, test as a base, and then you add one anabolic in there. And possibly for me, I am in off-season favor of an oral, for a bulking oral.
So that doesn't affect your appetite at all?
Doesn't affect my appetite. We've talked many times where I'm just still steamrolling through food.
Yeah.
Where you said before, dude, 2 days and I can't even look at food. I don't have that happen. So the side effects are different for everybody. But it's standard stuff. It's the tried and true stuff. It's the stuff that you saw in the 80s. It's stuff you saw in the 90s.
Yeah.
And, that's just the blueprint for us. And then I manipulate my diet and everything to go with it. And that's not what people want to hear. They just want to hear, dude, I got on this and I gained 25 pounds of muscle. It does not work that way. This just creates the environment.
It's the same. It's the same as the question that what can I do or what can I take to be huge and shredded at the same time? No, put 10 years into this, and then okay, yeah. Are there drugs? Yes, there's drugs. Do they play a part? Yes, they play a part. But if every single aspect of it does not get nailed first, it doesn't make a difference. You could take a gram of tren.
The gear is not making or breaking the champion. Yeah. It's not. Yeah. I mean, you talk to these guys back in the day. You had, Yates, Coleman. I'm always referring back to them because they're the greatest. They had limited supply. I mean,
dude, Yates put his Olympia cycle out in one of the old muscle mags, and people blasted him because they were like, "Oh, he's lying."
Dude, go fucking. All you gotta say is go watch Blood and Guts again, you fucking pussy.
Right.
And try to even mimic that workout.
And look what he looked like in the off season. This is someone that's eating a ridiculous amount of food and training like a fucking machine.
Yep.
Okay, it doesn't take that much. No. When you're every aspect of your life.
Remember that quote. Less is more. I was told that at a very, very young age, and I'm grateful for the people who got me into this. Less is more. Because before I even touched anything, I was 235 pounds at 19 years old. So
I was not.
You know what I mean? So look, you have to look at the genetics too.
Yeah, it's a huge part.
At 18 years old, at a high school combine, I was benching 405. Okay, you can. That is not a joke. Okay, so
can
now
I bench press 405 right now?
You add certain things and it just amplifies everything else. Sure. I mean, when you tell people in high school you're curling 80s in each hand, it's like it's abnormal. But all the other things, the gear, when you do decide to throw it in, if that's something you want to do and you want to take it to the next level, what do you think's going to happen to your strength? Of course, it's going to get amplified and things like that. But genetics play a huge role in this game.
And a big part of it,
fail to understand.
All that other stuff too. Like, does the shit work? Yes, of course it works. That's why people use it. But if you are going to do it, you want to get the most out of it and train and eat like a machine.
So yeah, to contrast what you said about how everything's ties in with it. The drugs, especially the drugs, don't do it. Exactly. That first cycle that I started when I was a junior in college, it was it was just test, and I researched for about a year before that, but I saw people saying, you're going to gain 20 pounds in your first cycle, and I expect that, and I did a 9-week cycle, and I was up 9 pounds. However, my diet was so clean because I was obsessed with being ripped at the time. It was, I didn't meal prep, but I ate healthy on campus, so it was all like grilled chicken wraps, salads, protein shakes with no carbs. I was very low carb. And that's what happens. If your diet is not geared towards bulking, you're not going to gain 20 pounds.
It has to be geared towards the goal. Right. So if size is the goal, the diet needs to lead that.
Right. So, and I learned that right after. And my next cycle after that, after I cycled off and came back on, was just test again and then a little bit of D-ball.
Yeah.
But I ate steak in there. I ate rice, and that's where I got the 20 pounds.
I can't believe the orals don't affect your appetite like that in the off season, because we've talked about it a little bit off camera. I cannot even look at food. Anytime that I've tried an off season oral, I cannot even look at my food. I can't.
I've never implemented an oral in my off season. Yeah. Even at my biggest 325, I did not use an oral. Because I use the food, as I'd rather have the extra food, then my appetite be stimulated.
Yeah, right, 100%.
Well, there's a genetic component. People say genetics in bodybuilding, but they really are probably saying is shape, the genetic shape. But there's also a genetic component to side effects that you get or how you can handle them. And not every, some people get some bad side effects that, there are people that take growth and their hands tingle like through the roof. And I could take the same batch of that and get none of the symptoms. We're taking the same thing. One guy's getting tingling hands. I'm not. If I didn't know that he was getting the tingling hands, I might think it's fake. Right. But the only reason I know that he's being affected is, so I just get low side effects with growth and stuff like that. And so I think that just some people can withstand it. Some people, can't sleep on tren. I never had a problem with that. even in prep.
Yeah, and then you're like, is my trend real?
Yeah, well, you know,
I can sleep. But that's just, how your body's reacting to it.
Right. You know it when you go into one of those coughing fits, but, other than
Do you get that?
I have.
Yeah. Or the dreams? I get crazy night terrors, dude. Like, it's like the worst shit ever.
I mean, now that I have my CPAP, the game's over.
Oh, it's the best.
I basically, it doesn't matter. There could be a hurricane going on, man.
What does Kate say when you put that thing on in the middle of the night? She like, my wife.
If I don't have it on, I get a slap in the back of the head.
You're sleeping on the couch.
Put it on.
Do you have the big mask?
Yeah. And then when you're going to take a piss, you look like Bane walking through the house.
Because you unplug the tube, right?
Yeah, you unplug the tube.
My wife said the other morning, because she got up before me to go to work, she said I was sitting there, she was, this is the most ridiculous thing ever. But yeah, everybody's has different side effects that they can go with it, and it's just you got to play with that, and that's why you always start low.
Yeah,
you never just go dive in head first,
and you don't want to just throw the kitchen sink at it. Like,
if anyone tells you that fucking person needs to get their head examined.
Yeah,
and take a look at that person, because there was guys growing up that I watched, like Evan. When I was a lot younger, I look up to Evan still tremendously. He was a big believer on that, and we talk all the time about things like that. And he gives me advice in this and the run around to certain things. And like I brought up that meant to him, and he laughed. He was like, "You fucking kidding me?" And it was just a question. Like I didn't, even really think about using it, but he was like, "That's a joke." You know what I mean? And that's to me one of the greatest bodybuilders ever.
Yeah.
Evan won't even talk about bodybuilding to me. He told me at the Olympia, he goes, if you don't stop fucking talking about bodybuilding, I'm going to kill you. Because I was just talking about the entire expo.
Talking about his fucking blood sugar and how many tangerines.
3 times a day you're testing your blood sugar. Evan's not doing that.
By the end of
Marcus Rule was not testing his blood sugar 3 times a day, bro.
By the time the end of the expo happened, Evan was literally just looking at me and like not reacting. He was going, and then he would go back to me.
He checked out.
He checked his out.
All right. Let's move on. So we want to get one more in. At Ben3066 wants to know, which foods are you guys currently on, and what is the craziest diet you've been on? So, what are you doing now, and then what was the craziest diet at the time? So for you, I'm really interested to hear this, because definitely tell us what your diet's like right now. But I remember you sending me just a snippet of your diet with Jansen when you started with him. Mm-hmm. And I just remember being floored by the amount of food you were eating. So that might not even be your craziest, but
that wasn't. When I started with Matt, I was like, this isn't too bad. But I think, going on to one of the craziest diets, which I'll talk about, I did on my own. But the foods right now are basic. The carbs are cream of rice, oatmeal, sweet potatoes, white potatoes, jasmine rice, and Ezekiel toast. As for protein, we do filet mignon or flank, whole eggs, egg white powder, Egg Pro it's actually called, by Universal. That's very easy for me instead of drinking those nasty-ass egg whites. Chicken, obviously, cod. I'm a big fan of canned tuna. I'm still old school like that, nice and quick, man. Oh,
I don't mind it, but it just takes a while to eat. It's dry.
It's so good, man.
You're doing fish voluntarily in the off season. You don't mind it?
Whitefish?
I
do that.
Yeah, and a lot of salmon.
Salmon's a different breed, though.
Yeah, and then the fats I add in are avocado, avocado oil, olive oil, all my nut butters, things like that. So it's all the basic stuff, man. I mean, I always like to ask this question to certain people, hence Evan and guys I deal with, because you want to hear something different, but you're not gonna. Yeah. It's all the basic stuff.
So what are your amounts then currently like? Because I don't think he necessarily meant like the exact sources. I think he's just
like ounces of.
Which foods are you currently on? Okay, yeah. So as for the protein sources, this is all after cooked. It's around 9 ounces cooked. Okay. It really depends though, man. In the off season, like if I wake up and my appetite's crazy, instead of 4 whole eggs, I'll do 6.
What's the highest you've gone with the protein per meal? It was high with Matt, right?
Per meal, probably 75, 80 grams.
So what weighted though? Like a pound of?
No,
10 ounces,
that
12
high
ounces,
with the protein.
12 ounces?
No, it was only like 9.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was. Yo, listen, that peak for the USA's. Granted, he wasn't there because his wife was due. He had me eating 450 grams of rice cooked per meal. So if you guys,
Is that 3 cups?
it's over 3 cups.
Yeah.
It's over 3 cups, I think, or maybe just
I think
about
it's
there.
exactly.
But that was multiple times a day, like 4 to 5 times a day. You know, I would do that mixed with the cod. I would just mash it up, throw mustard and salsa, and it was fucking delicious. I could eat that right now.
What about you, off season wise? Like what's the craziest you've done?
Craziest is not right now. It's been dialed down recently, but it's
This off season though, right? For sure.
Yeah, it was the diet right before I switched this past week. And I'm thankful that I got to switch it because it was like killing me. And I'm going to give you the exact thing because you need to know the exact amount. The morning, meal 1 was 8 whole eggs, 5 ounces of shrimp, 120 grams dry of oatmeal, and 10 grams of grass-fed butter. And being that I'm almost like I drive 90 minutes to work and I'm probably going to be late, and I don't want to eat at that time, I would just throw it in the blender, all of them after cooking the eggs, blend it, and just drink the chunks down, and then I would run out the door. By the time I get to work,
I'm gonna be fucking sick in a minute.
Then I get
Shrimp and eggs is the most disgusting shit I've ever had.
whatever. It's gonna go down that way.
Bro, he does it at the office. Like we share a blender, like, and he does it at the office. It's disgusting.
Then I had
No, I would have my own.
then
man.
meal
Fuck
2.
that.
Meal 2.
I don't use it.
Meal 2 is 12 ounces of chicken, with a cup and a half of rice, and 30 grams of olive oil. Meal 3 is the same thing, so it's 12 more ounces of chicken, a cup and a half of rice, 30 grams of extra virgin olive oil. Then pre-workout, which is you say something? Oh,
Gotta eat so much food, he's hearing things. Man.
He got shrimp coming out of his ears.
Pre-workout, 5 ounces of shrimp with 60 grams of waxy maize, and then 1 ounce of almonds. Training was just water. Post-workout was just whey isolate with 60 grams of waxy maize. And then that brings you to the end of the day. And this is where it gets really crazy. The final meal was 10 whole eggs, 9 ounces of steak, and 12 ounces of yams with 10 grams of grass-fed butter. And that took about an hour to eat.
It's a lot.
That's insane.
So
bro.
whatever he's
If I
eating,
had to
fuck
eat that
whatever
to get
he's
to
eating.
300, I'd be 250. I'd be happy with 250.
And I would just like, I would look at my wife. I'm like, oh. She goes,
That's rough.
You
That's rough.
would get in bed after that meal and you go, thank you God for letting me get past that and allowing me to go to sleep now.
Wow.
See, people don't want to do this shit. They want to know about the drugs. They don't want to
Yeah.
hear this.
Yeah, you can take no drugs and eat like that,
And be big
you'll
as
get
fuck.
to the size you want.
Yeah. What's the biggest you've done? So you were doing 12 ounces chicken,
Yeah.
12 ounces meat.
Yeah.
Have you gone higher than that?
See, like me, I was never big on like the
High protein.
the higher protein. The most I've done though was this one off season. I did 10 ounces, and I only kept it ground meat. So ground turkey,
Easy.
ground chicken,
Yeah.
ground beef, things like that, just to make it easy.
Yeah.
I can't eat 12 ounces of tenders.
Yeah.
That's actually that's not the worst actual meat that I've eaten. Listen, this is when I was early on. It was in the beginning of a contest prep with a coach that he I don't know why he made me do this, and I was very young and naive to even argue back. I always follow the coach. It was 4 times a day, 16 ounces cooked chicken, so a pound, and a pound of yams 4 times a day. That's 2 pounds of food 4 times a day. That was like at 16 weeks out. And then we started slowly just like lowering it.
This
When
was
I-
your first show? Was
No.
this Atlantic States?
This was the 2012, so my second show.
Okay. I
So,
know
but
who
when I
it
tell you
is.
my stomach,
We'll talk after.
Yeah, don't even say his name.
No,
He'll
no.
never get another client in his life.
when my stomach was like a turtle shell. And by the end, all the yams had been eliminated, but the 16 ounces but there was no digestion. It was just a gassed stomach with low body fat and abs.
What do you mean? There was just no consideration to your digestion?
No
at all?
consideration.
Yeah.
This is the first off season where I actually had consideration to my digestion.
Yeah, but look how much more you could eat and how much
Right.
better
Yeah.
you feel.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, no,
You know
no.
what I mean?
I'm big on fiber with psyllium husk 2 times a day, and it helps like little. And if I don't take it, I'm fucked up. If I do take it, I'm good.
Yeah, my digestion just has always been pretty good to me. Just with my normal greens in there. I do the greens powder every morning. That's a big thing for me, with some natural calm, some magnesium, and I'm pretty much good. I never feel backed up. So
It's good. I think that's a great spot for us to just close this podcast out right there.
Vincenzo is never backed up.
Yep.
I'm never back.
So I'm glad that everyone knows that now.
Don't jinx it today.
Okay, so I want to thank everyone again for writing in questions. I want to thank everybody that left comments on the previous 2 episodes. If you missed the second one, it'll be right here. And I think the next scheduled one that we're doing of this is going to have Evan Centopani in the booth with us. At that point, he'll be, I think, 4 or 5 weeks out from New York. His comeback.
That'll be a good one. I can't wait for that.
That'll be a good one. So stay tuned to the Animal Pack Instagram page. There'll be a call out to write in questions for Ev. We appreciate everyone that does support us, everybody that watches, everybody writes in. We appreciate it. And until next time, take care, everybody.